uh, about the measure again, and then I know you had a couple of people that wanted to talk to us last time,
Yes.
and we're going to allow that today.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Let
Chair.
me just formally call the meeting of the House Higher Education Committee of the Georgia House of Representatives together. We got a little faster than I meant to. I'll call us to order and recognize you to tell us briefly about your proposition, HB 427.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. HB 427 seeks to eliminate the disclosure of a criminal record upon application for our colleges and universities for most situations. There are a few exceptions, but for most. Probably the only argument I'm going to make today comes from statistics from the Department of Corrections, which I looked on their website just a couple of days ago. And as you know, there's statistics about every possible demographic situation of the folks who are in our prison system, from ethnicity to, can you hear me? There. So demographics in our prison system, there's a lot of detailed information on the DOC website, everything from ethnicity to, but one of the things that stood out to me was the educational information. And what was, I knew kind of firsthand, but in more detail I looked at it to get some specifics. But most of our folks in our prison system, they're school dropouts. So that's like 53%. And then another 38% is folks who achieved 12th grade or a GED. 9% is represented by folks who have some form of college education. That may be a year, that may be a little bit of technical college, but at least some college. It's a microscopic 1.94% of our overall prison population of those who are four-year degree holders. So what does that say to you? I don't know, but what it says to me is if we will let as many folks go through and matriculate through our university college system, we create public safety, we create less crime, and we all but eliminate someone from incarceration if they get a four-year degree. So that makes a good merit argument for 427. If we don't put any other barriers in front of our folks trying to get into school, the better off we are as a state in terms of the economics, in terms of public safety. And so I think even though there is a process by which someone who has a record can go through, and it's burdensome, it's onerous, it's defeating, it's a deterrent, and it shoos away a lot of potential students into our university system just having to explain that record. So the question is, how long does someone have to pay for a mistake? And I don't think being blocked in any way, shape, or form from our university system should be a consideration. So 427 seeks to eliminate that barrier, and I think we'll be better off if that is.
Great. Thank you. And again, want to keep this quick, but you had a question. Representative Earhart.
Thank you. I just want to clarify the exceptions. Here on lines, I guess it's 23, 24, except for convictions for any of the felony offenses specified in these paragraphs. Can you just speak to what sorts of convictions would not apply?
Yes, those are sexual crimes.
Okay. Limited to sexual crimes?
Yes.
Let me, if I can, for the committee, we're not in a place the bill is not ripe for action yet. We primarily today want to hear folks that had come to testify about us. We'll take this in the details of the bill at a later date, or invite the representatives to come back in the morning. We're going to meet again. But let's let these folks testify this afternoon if it would please the committee. So with that, we didn't have a sign-up sheet, but I know there are individuals that wish to do it, so I'm going to allow you to queue yourself up, and remember, this is the legislative version of "We're listening to you."
Cool. Hi, so my name is Abby. Some of you may remember me. I'm 22 years old. I'm a senior at Georgia State University. I'm not going to retell my story. I'm sure you guys may remember it. I just wanted to speak today and ask how many of us care about feeling safe in our communities? We all care about feeling safe. We all want to walk our dogs at night or walk our kids in the evening. And I don't have kids, so I'm kind of just making that part up. But we just want to feel safe in our communities. And one thing that's really important is Formerly incarcerated people with education, their recidivism drops to 5.6%. Currently in Georgia, the recidivism rate, according to the DOC, is about 30%, but it gets to 50 when we're looking at technical probation and parole violations. So we're investing $1.2 billion a year in a solution that's half effective. And then we have education that's proven to be effective time and time again. And I just want to encourage everyone to invest in solutions that are going to keep our communities safe. They're humane, they're proven to work, and yeah, I think that's my entire piece of mind. If anyone, or if I don't know, does anyone want to ask a question? Maybe we have time for one. I know we're not debating it today.
Well, yeah, we don't have any questions for you, Abby, but I thank you very much for joining us before and again today, and we will stay in touch with you. We have any other speakers? Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, Patrick Rodriguez here. I'm the director of Georgia State University's Prison Education Project. I'm also the executive director of the Georgia Coalition for Higher Education in Prison. I've spoken with many members, a part of this committee, about this bill specifically, and I wanted to just show you one thing as a visual aid. Here is the application that Kennesaw State University sent me, the questions that they asked that said, we're going to make a choice that is in the best interest of you and the university. As I am somebody who did commit crime here in the state of Georgia, I'm just going to be very blunt about it. Describe in detail what happened, where were you, who you were with, and what did you learn from the experience. I would like to bring up item number 2. Item number 2 is my 14-page explanatory essay, which I think is longer than every single bill you may or may not have in your folder. The next item is my criminal history GCIC background. My next item is my indictment. My next item is another indictment, and my other item is also another indictment. What I also had to include in my application was every certificate that I received when I was in prison to try to justify my character just to go to Kennesaw State University. Did 5 years here in the Georgia Department of Corrections, and I am here to say that it is very difficult to go to school. It is very difficult to go to school if you had a criminal conviction. I did successfully actually get in and graduate last spring. I want to thank the chairman for providing this space and opportunity for me to speak. If there are any questions, I would love to be able to answer any at this time.
Sir, you don't have any questions, but again, I thank you for your testimony as well. And I thank Representative Kennard for bringing the item on. In the interest of time today, we are going to move along, but you have the chair's commitment that we'll continue the dialogue. I think there will be an opportunity to work on and explain further, in further detail, the language, go into further Representative Earhart's questions. But I thank you very much for doing that, and I thank Representative Kennard for bringing the proposal to us today.
All right, thank you.
Any further speakers on this item before we move forward? Representative Kennard, thank you very much, and we'll be back in touch with you. Moving on in the agenda this afternoon, we're going to introduce a couple of new measures to the committee quickly. Representative Wilkerson, yeah, you're here. I saw you. There you are. Yes, sir. You want to tell us about 310? House Bill 310.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, today I bring to you for your consideration House Bill 310. What this does is it partially returns the Zell to what it was back in 2011, but it does keep the high requirement of a GPA. So if you look at line 17, starting on 16, what drove this bill is the fact that across the state, a lot of students were unable to take the SATs during the pandemic or even the ACT. But even prior to that, what you'll find is a lot of the people that are able to take it are wealthier and more in the metro area. So when you look across the state, maybe those prep courses aren't always in communities that allow them to get that 1200. They're very bright students. They do well in college, but they don't get that score coming out of high school. So if you were at Georgia Tech, for example, I'll use that as an example, and you had all the other requirements, but you did not have that 1200 on the SAT, but you were top of your class, you would never have Zell because you didn't get that score out of high school. So what this does is it says you have to maintain that 3.7, and then we remove the requirements for SAT or ACT standardized testing on lines 17 through 21. And then if you go to lines 58 through 62, what we do is 61, we had to add a language in there because for dual enrollment, we limited the number of hours for dual enrollment unless you have a qualifying score for the Zell. So what it does is just put that qualifying score back in there. So the intent of this legislation is to match what we're doing through the university system, which is putting less reliance on that one-day test and putting it more in the whole work of the student. I think the last few years, just a few colleges have actually required the standardized testing, and so what this would do is allow students to obtain that Zell scholarship, which we are fully funding this year, without having that required score. That is the bill, and I'll stand for any questions if you have any in time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that there are other schools that are not requiring the SAT. Can you give us just an example or two of some other schools that don't require the SAT
Well,
for their scholarships?
okay, so if you look at it nationwide, I know even the University of California system has done away with the SAT. And so when we look at our schools not only competing here, but across the country, we want to make sure that we're having the same requirements that they do. I know when we were looking at schools, Wake Forest doesn't require SATs. There's a lot of schools out there that don't require SATs anymore, or ACTs, and I'll quit lumping one in with the other, I mean, using one singularly, but standardized testing, let me say that. In Georgia, my understanding is that most of the schools did not require it except for your research universities this last year. And as we go forward, I think that is something that is consideration that is probably better coming from the chancellor. But as we look at the regional schools, they are not necessarily requiring it and the comprehensives. So we want to make sure that they can also obtain the Zell, because if you can get into the school and you're admitted to the school, do you just take that one-day test so you can get that full scholarship is the question.
Well, I would answer that question. If you wanted the Zell, you do.
Yes,
I mean,
correct.
it's, you don't have to take it if you're into the school you want to do, but and as you mentioned, the plan before the House, the budget today is to move the scholarship to 100%. But I mean, I think that's the reason for doing it. You have a further question? Yes. Representative Clays.
I do. Thank you so much. So in taking away the SAT and the ACT, then our measure would be only the GPA throughout the 4 years of that particular student?
Yeah, so the way it works right now is that SAT, ACT, the standardized test is only applicable for that requirement to hit Zell. Once you get into college, it's GPA driven. So you still have to maintain that GPA. So for example, if you thought there was grade inflation and then you had a 3.7, you got into college and your GPA fell to 2.9 or 3.0, you would lose the Zell in college and it would pretty much quickly level out. But you would have to still maintain whatever that college GPA is, the requirements for Zell now.
May I follow up with a question?
Yes.
So after the 3.7, they can go down to the regular Zell though, in keeping that GPA?
They will maintain whatever that GPA is that requires in college, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Would you be surprised to know that between 2007 and 2017, or even if I go back to 2007, 2016, that the percentage of students in Georgia above 3.7 rose 50%?
In high school?
Yes.
I would not necessarily be surprised, but I would also believe that a lot of times, I know certain school districts, yes, the GPAs do rise above. And so, for example, some will do away with ranking students. So what we're talking about is when they get to college, though, the interesting thing would be, are those 3.7 still exceeding in college? Because what I'm trying to do is not capture the grade inflation, but I'm trying to capture those students who, because they can't afford $2,000 for a prep class or don't have the prep classes, can still qualify for Zell. Because I believe that after a year or two, it's going to shake out anyway. If you don't deserve the Zell, you're going to lose it in college. I mean, that's the bottom line. So we may be subsidizing for a year, possibly some students, but I am not surprised with the GPA increasing. Plus, a lot more students are taking AP classes and dual enrollment, which also give you points because of the work that we've seen with the increase in dual enrollment. I think those extra points you get are helpful as well.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Further questions? Further questions? We have another bill later on that's going to touch base a little bit around the SAT, ACT. Anybody wish to speak to this bill 310? All right, this is our first hearing on this item. Thank you, Representative. We'll move forward to 607, House Bill 607.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here we go. HB 607, LC.
Gentlemen, this is the legislative version of speed
0554.
Speed presenting. Yes, sir.
So this is an apples to apples bill, basically. So the College Board changed the SAT in 2016, which means scoring for the tests is different. The ACT, the College Board, and the NCAA Technical Advisor Board got together, created a concordance table that you'll find in your packet there, to determine how the SAT and ACT should align. So in our code for Zell Miller's 1200 SAT, 26 on the ACT, when they change the SAT scores, it makes a student taking the ACT, puts a deck stacked against them. This because 1200 on the SAT, 75th percentile, 26 on ACT, 82nd percentile. To make them equivalent, it actually should be 25. So this allows for our Georgia Student Finance Commission, January 1st of each year, to do the math and set it equivalent to what the 1200 SAT is. So we're apples to apples. That's all it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was an instructional lead teacher at a high school, and one of the things that came out was that African American students score better on the ACT. So if we are putting them all together, is that going to affect their enrollment, since most schools took both? And
So I am unaware of the studies that you've cited regarding ACT and who does better on it, but I will tell you now that those that are taking the ACT now, regardless of skin color, are getting, I don't know, getting a little screwed on it.
Let me see if I can put that a little better for you. You have to make a high. You have to make a 26 now on the ACT to get Zell. And what the gentleman is suggesting is a concordance table. You would only have to make a 25.
That's
so
correct.
in your line of questioning, if students of color do better on the ACT, this would mean getting a 25 would get you in instead of having to get a 26.
That's right.
So it would be to their benefit and others.
thank you.
But your comment was correct, Mr. Chairman. Number 5, Dr. Clark.
All right. So prior to the SAT changing their scores, I remember when all that happened, a 1200, would that have been a higher or a lower score than what it is now? Like a higher or lower percentile?
I don't know.
I believe I can answer that question. Today, the same test to be equivalent, you would make I think it equates to a 1240 now. Because if you look on the concordance table, a 26 on the ACT, you would be even with a 1230 on the SAT. So we're requiring an ACT score of 26, which would be equivalent to a 1230, 1240, 1250 in the concordance table. It's top of page 2. So as they've been a little bit out of sync, you had to make a higher score on the ACT.
That's correct.
So it would reflect, if you will, a bit of a better student if the tests are reflective.
And then follow-up question. So this bill, as it's written, says that the equivalent score will be determined each year.
That's correct.
Are we expecting this to fluctuate from year to year? Why would we need to do it yearly?
So that's a good question. But as it changes, as it does fluctuate, we don't have to revisit this. So it'll be done automatically. So they will evaluate it every year. If the College Board changes the parameters regarding SATs again, then we don't have to go in and change from 25 to 26. It will be done automatically.
That answers the lady's question. I don't believe we expect it to change every year, but this gives them the flexibility. Also gives the students the ability to know at the beginning of the year what the score is. Did you have anybody that wished to speak on the bill?
I don't think so. It's pretty self.
You have one more question then. Representative Bernal.
Okay.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. And this may not have anything to do with it, but I think that it does. If we're talking about sports betting and putting the money in the lottery for education. And of course, we can't tell them how to disseminate it. I can see where this may be a problem for those minority students that they don't get in, but then their parents are spending all the money playing the lottery, but then they're going to end up booted out of school. Thank you.
Representative Bruno, as I understand it, if we were to make the adjustment today and not move it forward, the ACT score to get the Zell would move from 26 to 25. So this would make it easier to obtain the Zell. We're suggesting that would actually make it easier, so more people would be able to avail themselves of the Zell Miller Scholarship if this goes into place. It's a little bit counterintuitive when you look at the mixing of it. But this is our first hearing on this. That's why we're going to meet again in the morning and let everybody sleep over it and fully understand it. So if there are no further questions, we're going to move on. Would you mind checking with them after? Thank you. All right. Do we have? Yes, Chairman Dickey. No, we have added to the agenda again. Hearing only for us this afternoon. Chairman Dickey is bringing us. Members, you're familiar with the REACH scholarship, realizing educational achievement can happen. The House of and Chairman Dickey has been a champion of this for a long time. It's important. It means a lot to our citizens around the state. And the gentleman has a change that I think we may be very much interested in. Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you allowing me to do this bill today. I've been very involved with REACH Scholarship for probably 10 years since I was here. Governor Deal created this program, and I pushed some minor changes to it when I was floor leader, and it's just something I've watched. I've seen in my local counties sponsor REACH scholarships, and I know many of y'all have maybe been to signing scholarships, signing ceremonies when these scholarships are given out to students in the 8th grade. I know my friend Patty Bentley and I have been to those in Peach County and Crawford County and what other counties. Is very effective, especially in some of our more unpopulated areas. But it's funded. It's a $10,000 scholarship that's funded for students in 10th grade to use for 8th grade, for college scholarships, going to technical school or higher colleges. And so it's a great program that I see as a partnership between the state paying half of it, or a foundation, statewide foundation paying 25%, and then local businesses and school systems raise the other 25%. So it's everybody's got a little skin in the game, and it's just great to see these students. They have to earn and keep this scholarship program. It's just not given to them automatically. They have to keep good grades. It's not given to A students. It's given to students that are showing promise. They're good students, good behavior. They're given a mentor to help work them through to make sure they're successful. And so it kind of lifts up the whole family, the student. The whole grade really sees this signing ceremony much like a athletic scholarship given out, and I think it just really raises the bar and the expectations of students in those schools. And so I've just been a huge champion of it and want to keep it strong. And it's not a big program. It's only $6.3 million of state funds, but it's a very effective. We have given scholarships through the years for the last 11 years to 4,200 students, and in those counties it's from 5 to possibly 8, depending on the size of the county. Some counties can't raise the local match and only do maybe 2 or possibly 3, and but I just want to say hats off to Chairman Lynn Riley with Georgia Student Finance. Has been a real helpful in this program. Her agency runs this program and does a great job keeping it. It's in all 180 school systems, so it's a lot to look after and a lot to do. And so at the request of the governor's office and some discussion, wanted to add victims of human trafficking as eligible priority students to receive this this scholarship. We also have foster children there also, and so wanted to add victims of human trafficking. Hopefully this is a very, very small number of children that would be eligible for this, but wanted to be able to include that in when we give these scholarships out. So that's what this bill does. I know it really is a lead up to next year. I've had some feedback on this program. The local systems are having somewhat of a difficult time raising their share, and we've had some discussions with the foundation. Michael Patrick, who's executive out at Chick-fil-A, is our foundation president and is doing a fabulous job. He's got a really high-powered statewide foundation board, and really thank him for his efforts there as well. So love the program, want to keep going. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Chairman Dickey, you've done a great job and done a great job. So the gentleman's proposition is to add, again, another category of individual that would be eligible, and it's that would have gone through a tragic and trying situation. So that's what the gentleman's proposition is. You got a couple of questions here. We're going to try to take them in the order they came, and then we'll try to move forward. Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman Dickey, as well. So first, you said this is for 8th graders. So what do they, I guess I'm confused. Do they still go through high school first and then?
Yes, no, they continue on their high school career. They identified in the 8th grade. And it's students whose parents usually never been to college. They're a little bit, not poverty line, but probably students that maybe would not be eligible or were looking forward to going to college I'm not sure.
No, you're doing a great job. I was just going to ask the doctor, in the interest of time, that the REACH scholarship exists. We're just trying to add something to it. Would it be okay if we got, maybe I don't want to put you on the spot, but in the morning, or certainly at a higher education meeting within the next week, sort of a primer on the what the REACH is in more detail.
Yeah, we got a
one
one-pager.
Yes, ma'am. Please.
So I guess my follow-up to this is I understand, we want to add victims of human trafficking. 8th grade my daughter's in 8th grade. She's 14. What if they become a victim of human trafficking later? When they're 16 or a little bit older? Do we have that many?
Just the way the program is right now, it's
12-year-olds?
identified in 8th grade, so we'd have to modify the program, and we certainly look at that next year to do some of those type things.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Glaze.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this. I've been on the REACH committee for Fulton County for the last 4 years, and this program is phenomenal. It is reaching the students and their families that need the wraparound services that it provides during high school. I'm glad to see that we're adding another category. My question is, how is this identified? Because I know when I get the packages and I'm sitting looking at the student before I ever get to interview them, how will this, with disclosure, be put in their packet? Has that been worked out?
Well, I think you're very familiar, so I think it would be part of the criteria that you would look at locally, the local individuals that select these students on a local level would hopefully have that information and make that particular student a priority to receive one of these scholarships.
I think maybe what the lady's asking is once you get an eligible student, how you came by being eligible is probably a private matter that might not be disclosed. I think they're probably regular
students. Principals. I think sort of identify. Hand it off to some other people like you to actually make the selection.
I just would hope that it's not in the packet, and maybe we've got a check box that it meets one of the requirements, and
yes,
that
ma'am.
there's nothing else in there.
I think the lady raises a great point. It's just if the student's eligible there, it doesn't matter how they obtain the eligibility to be there. Great great point and great question. Representative Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Dickey. Clayton County does participate, so I've been to probably about 3 of the signing ceremonies, and it is very exciting. The parents are excited about it. Our lead counselor for the district is the one who contacts the counselors at the schools. So I think that may be a way to find out. They would know about the human trafficking possibly, and then possibly not, because sometimes when people go through traumatic things, they don't necessarily say anything about it. But thank you for the work on it.
Yeah, thank you for your support of the program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would this include refugee students? That's my question.
I don't know the answer to that. If they're eligible for the program, I don't know their eligibility.
We'll get that answer for you.
I'll get
And that's a good question. We'll get that question. Representative Jackson, Edna Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I can hold my question until after this is over. I'm concerned. I've been out of the school system for so long. You know, I know that kids used to take the PSAT and then the SAT and all of that. And I don't know if this SAT is equated with the PSAT or what it is.
No.
Okay. All right. Then that I would like to talk to you about that. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. I was just wanted to thank Chairman Dickey for his work on this, because as he stated, this program is in all 180 school districts, and it is extremely important down in rural Georgia. So just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are kind of against a hard stop here. We had, I don't think it was on the agenda, but I want to make note of it so you can take a look at it. I had a substitute drafted for HB 228. If you recall, we had a presentation by Chair Lady Dempsey about adding Chamberlain. Am I right? Yeah, Chamberlain was in this bill, I think. The nursing school to the potential eligibility for the TEG. In reviewing that, and I'll go into more detail tomorrow morning, identified some things with our other some other institutions that are the TEG that some I'll just say some things we need to look at as a committee. So my suggestion and what we had drafted into this bill was that there would be a sunset. I think actually the copy of the bill you have may not be the right one now that I'm looking at it, because it suggests that this section be repealed in 2025, which repeal would stop somebody that was in the school from continuing. So that's not the language we'd have. But the suggestion would be you would have to be in the school within the next 2 years. So we sunset the TEG eligibility for this school. We may do that for some other schools going forward, because it's very important that we continue to focus on that. So I would just ask you to think tonight about the situation of if we extend that TEG to another place because of the expenses into a Hope, that we do want to keep a tight guardrail around it so that we can check on the state's dollars, because it would probably be about a $3.9 million impact to our Hope eligibility. So this is the crux of the bill. It would be implemented in a different way so as we don't cut students off that started. I don't think that's fair. If you start down to Chamberlain thinking you're getting the TEG, we don't want to cut them off, but it would stop the enrollment of new students after July 2025. We have that sub-drafted, and that would be before us in the morning, but that was the idea. I'll take a question. Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was, do we have that copy? Because I didn't have it in my folder.
We will get it to you tonight. We came straight over here after the floor. This is the same operation that you would see, but this repeals the code, which as we know would take it off for people that are currently enrolling. We don't want to do that. So it's the exact same language, but I will get that out to you tonight by mail. But that is what we have before us. So we would and we'll also be looking at Chairman Jasper's House Bill 392 in the morning at 8 o'clock. Sorry for all the hard work, but when we go late on the floor, we have to split our time with our committee meeting. If there's no further business before the committee, we'll stand adjourned without objection. Hearing none, we are adjourned.